Another year, another quarterback crisis in Cleveland. We'd barely kicked off week 1, and the Browns are already facing the same old question that has haunted this franchise for decades. What exactly is their plan at quarterback? For fans, it's like deja vu. Just when stability seems possible, the carousel spins again, and this season, the chaos has a new face caught in the middle: Shedeur Sanders. He came into the NFL with hype, storylines, and a famous last name that made him impossible to ignore. Drafted to a roster desperate for direction, you'd think Cleveland might lean into that talent, test him under pressure, and at least see what they've got. But instead, Sanders has been buried on the depth chart, watching Dillon Gabriel leapfrog him early, and veterans like Joe Flacco thrown into the fire, while his own reps get limited and scattered. It's left fans asking the obvious: is this just Cleveland being Cleveland? Or is there something deeper at play? Favoritism, politics, or flat-out organizational negligence? Because here's the reality: nothing about this situation feels normal. Sanders showed flashes in training camp: accuracy, poise, smart reads. Analysts tracked completion rates above 70% in drills. Yet he's treated like an afterthought, waiting behind players who have stumbled just as much, if not worse. And in a city with this quarterback history, that doesn't just raise eyebrows, it sounds alarms. From the outside, it looks like Cleveland walked into another season without a true plan. 1 foot in with Flacco, 1 foot in with Gabriel, and Sanders stuck on the sideline, while talk of the next great draft class already hangs over their heads. So where does this leave Shedeur Sanders? A hidden gem waiting to break out? Or just the latest quarterback set up to fail in Cleveland's endless quarterback saga? Let's break it all down. For most franchises, landing a franchise quarterback is the dream. For the Cleveland Browns, it feels more like a curse. This team has been chasing the guy for decades. From Tim Couch in the late 90s, to the roller coaster drama of Johnny Manziel, to the up-and-down saga of Baker Mayfield, and even the seemingly big swing at Deshaun Watson, none of it has worked. Every time the Browns believe they've solved the puzzle, the picture falls apart again. That's why, heading into this season, fans didn't just want flashes of hope. They wanted answers. They wanted a quarterback plan that actually made sense. Instead, what they've gotten looks like the same old story: confusion, half measures, and an overcrowded depth chart that feels more like scrambled trial and error than a vision for the future. The decision-making has been inconsistent at best. Drafting rookies like Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders should have sparked competition. Instead, Gabriel was given the QB2 role almost instantly, while Sanders has barely had the chance to show what he can do. Then, there's Joe Flacco back in the mix as a starter, despite being well past his prime, creating the kind of quarterback limbo that Cleveland has become notorious for. Ask around the league, and people will tell you the same thing. The Browns treat quarterbacks like rental cars. Try one, move on, forget the last. That endless cycle hasn't just hurt the roster, it's wrecked the confidence of players who might have developed into something more if placed in a stable system. So when fans see Shedeur Sanders stuck in the background, they're not just frustrated with his lack of reps, they're furious at the deja vu. Because if Cleveland hasn't figured out quarterbacks in 20 years, why should anyone believe they're going to get it right this time? And that sets up the next big question. In this mess, how long can Joe Flacco really hold on to the top spot? On paper, the Browns' safest option is the veteran, Joe Flacco. He's got the resume, the Super Bowl ring, and the kind of pocket presence that young quarterbacks are supposed to learn from. For a team staring down another shaky quarterback battle, handing the keys to Flacco seemed like the responsible move. But reality is never that simple. Flacco isn't 30 anymore. He's 39, playing behind an offensive line that's had its share of breakdowns. On a roster full of young talent, asking for leadership while also dragging through a schedule that looks brutal right out of the gate? National outlets have already penciled in potential losing streaks by mid-season, and the truth is, if the Browns start stacking losses, patience won't last long. The national media rankings tell the story. Flacco has been listed behind names like Daniel Jones, Russell Wilson, and even quarterbacks who haven't officially started an NFL game. For a former Super Bowl MVP, that's a striking fall in perception. Fair or not, the label around him is clear: a placeholder, not the plan. And fans know exactly how this plays out. Give it 4 to 5 games, maybe 6, and if Cleveland is sitting at 1 to 5 when the bye week arrives, calls to bench Flacco will grow impossible to ignore. The noise will only get louder. Every interception, every sack, every fourth quarter stall. The Browns are gambling on Flacco handling the storm long enough to buy time for their rookie depth. But the risk is obvious. If he falters early, the pressure to turn to Dillon Gabriel or create the spark with Shedeur Sanders will hit its peak. Because for the Browns, Joe Flacco isn't just a quarterback. He's a stopwatch. And the question isn't if the clock runs out, it's when. If Joe Flacco is the now, then Dillon Gabriel is what the Browns want to believe is the next. And that's been part of the problem. From the very start of training camp, coaches seemed determined to fast-track Gabriel up the depth chart, sliding him into the QB2 role with barely a fight. Shedeur Sanders, despite showing flashes of accuracy and composure in camp, was left trailing, watching Gabriel grab the spot that usually signals, "You're the one being groomed." And here's the kicker. Gabriel didn't exactly blow anyone away. Truth be told, his preseason was rough around the edges. Some nice throws, yes, but just as many shaky sequences. Analysts pointed out stretches where he looked rattled, missing open reads or forcing the ball into traffic. For every promising moment, there were drives that made people question if he was even ready for NFL speed. Yet somehow, responsibility kept falling his way. Sanders, meanwhile, often had to wait for scraps, late practice reps, limited time, and preseason snaps that came next to backups and bubble players who were cut days later. It wasn't a fair comparison. Gabriel was being tested with the structure of the offense. Sanders was being tossed into chaos. Fans noticed. By mid-August, debates were raging online. Why is Dillon Gabriel locked in as number 1? 2, when Shedeur is hitting 70 to 80% in camp drills, the frustration wasn't just about Gabriel being elevated, it was about Sanders being buried. But this is the Browns' way, isn't it? A franchise known for questionable QB decisions leaned instantly into one rookie while sidelining another before the real competition ever began. Now, Gabriel sits just one bad Flacco game away from starting. And Sanders? He's watching, waiting, and wondering how he lost a fight that, to many people, never actually happened. Which brings us to the most glaring part of the story: Sanders himself. Because being invisible in Cleveland doesn't match what insiders say he showed on the field. For someone who entered the NFL with buzz, storylines, and eyes on him, Shedeur Sanders has been treated more like an afterthought than an asset. Training camp reports painted him as steady and efficient. Beat writers noted his completion percentage hovering around 70 to 80%, a number that raised eyebrows given his limited reps and the pressure of learning a new system. Each time he got live snaps in practice, the reviews were positive, calm, controlled, sharper than many expected from a rookie. And still, his role shrank. By the time preseason games rolled around, Sanders wasn't working with starters or even key backups. He was often surrounded by players who'd be cut days later, guys fighting for roster spots, not building chemistry for the future. That matters. Quarterbacks can only shine if the pieces around them give them a chance to show their timing, decision-making, and leadership. Sanders was placed in conditions almost designed to look messy. Then came the breaking point, the final preseason game. Fourth quarter, 2-minute drill. the ideal pressure test for a young QB. Fans were ready to see Sanders take command of the moment. Instead, the Browns yanked him in favor of Tyler Huntley, deliberately pulling the spotlight away. The message was loud and clear. Sanders wasn't even going to be allowed the platform to prove people wrong. And when fans asked why, nothing came back from the coaching staff except vague comments about rotations. It didn't add up. If a rookie shows accuracy, poise, and grit in camp, why shuffle him to the back while another who struggled gets the number 2 nod? To many, it felt less like evaluation and more like the Browns deciding early that Sanders wasn't their guy. And once that decision was made, he was boxed out of chances to flip the narrative. Which leads us to the real question. If Cleveland never trusted him from the start, what does that reveal about their so-called plan at quarterback? So, what happens now? The Browns like to talk about stability, but their depth chart looks anything but stable. With Joe Flacco at the top, Dillon Gabriel sitting at QB2, and Shedeur Sanders stashed away, this season already carries the scent of another Cleveland special. A quarterback carousel waiting to spin out of control. If Flacco gives them a few serviceable gains, fine. But no one inside or outside the organization truly believes he's a 17-game answer. He's a bridge, nothing more. And if the Browns stumble early, as many expect against a brutal first-month schedule, the decision to stick with Flacco will get tested fast. That's when the spotlight slides to the rookies. Gabriel is next in line, but his flaws have already been exposed. He looks promising in spurts, but also risky under pressure. Analysts worry he'll start hot and then fade as defenses adjust. If that disaster unfolds, the Browns are left with little choice but to dig deeper into the bench. And that's where Sanders comes in. Fans sense it too. They know all 3 quarterbacks are likely to see action before the year's over, because that's the reality in Cleveland. Some are already predicting a line of events that feels almost inevitable. Flacco hits a skid, Gabriel struggles, and suddenly the door creaks open for Sanders. Whether the Browns wanted it that way or not. But here's the catch. Opportunities in the NFL don't last long. If Sanders does get his shot, it might come in a no-win scenario. Thrown into the middle of a season slipping away, with little support, and fans already divided. In Cleveland history, that script usually ends badly. So while Sanders remains the Browns' great unknown, this much is obvious. Failing to build a clear quarterback plan for 2024 has once again put the season and the rookies into chaos. And if the long-term solution is already being scouted in next year's draft, that may be the biggest red flag of all. If you want to know how shaky the Browns feel about their current quarterback room, just look at where they've already been spotted: college games. Reports surfaced of representatives sitting in the stands at Ohio State, Texas, keeping a close eye on Arch Manning and other young passers. Front office leaks claim the Browns are doing their homework on the so-called can't-miss quarterback class of 2026. And once those rumors got out, frustrated fans couldn't hold back. Because think about it. How can a franchise invest draft capital into not one, but 2 rookie quarterbacks this year and still already be sniffing around for the next one? That screams desperation. Worse, it proves the Browns don't have a clear vision for quarterback development. Every time the pressure rises, their reflex is to look for the future instead of building the present. And even that future isn't guaranteed. College football's Week 1 showed that this supposedly elite class has cracks. Big names looked average. Potential stars struggled out of the gate. And Arch Manning? He's not even coming out yet. That well-publicized name won't be rescuing anyone in Cleveland anytime soon. It leaves the Browns stuck in a dangerous cycle, constantly chasing the next big thing while ignoring the quarterbacks they already have. That's how you end up wasting talent like Shedeur Sanders, burying him in reps, now while secretly positioning yourself to move on quickly if things go south. The draft board might look tempting, but it's a gamble this franchise has lost over and over again. Fans don't want promises about the next great prospect. They want development. They want structure. And they want proof that the future could actually be built in Cleveland, not just scouted somewhere else. And yet, history suggests the Browns always believe the answer is out there, somewhere else. Next year, next draft, next savior. Which only fuels the question. Did they already damage the quarterback they do have in Shedeur Sanders before he even got a fair chance? Every young quarterback enters the NFL on fragile ground. Confidence has to be built, timing has to be sharpened, and reps, the lifeblood of development, have to be earned in meaningful settings. But when you look at Shedeur Sanders' first months in Cleveland, you start to wonder, did the Browns already set him back before he even got started? From the very beginning, his path felt stacked against him. Instead of balancing his snaps with Dillon Gabriel's, Sanders was often left waiting, thrown into practices late, working with fringe players who were cut days later, or shuffled into messy preseason rotations that didn't play to his strengths. When he finally reached a moment that could showcase growth, the 2-minute drill in the preseason finale, he never even touched the field. Pulled out. The ball went to someone else. It's a subtle but painful process. A quarterback doesn't just need practice, he needs validation. He needs to feel the team is behind him, that he's not simply filling space until the next draft prospect arrives in town. Without that, development stalls. And that's the concern boiling over now. Instead of encouraging Sanders with tailored reps, Cleveland may have already chipped away at his rhythm and confidence. Fair or not, when a QB is iced out this early, it plants the seed that he isn't trusted. Worse, it leaves fans split. Half see a potential star who deserves more chances. The other half see a benchwarmer who wasn't built for the league. Both perspectives grow louder the longer Sanders sits, and when public perception fractures this early, very few quarterbacks escape that unscarred. For a franchise famous for ruining quarterbacks, the Browns may have repeated history in record time. So now the looming question isn't just about when Sanders plays, it's about whether Cleveland already broke him before he got the shot. So here we are. The Browns enter another season, another quarterback shuffle, and somehow the spotlight again lands not on who's starting today, but on what's going to collapse tomorrow. Joe Flacco might steady the ship for a few weeks, maybe even sneak a couple of wins. Dillon Gabriel has been handed the QB2 role, though plenty believe he hasn't earned it. And Shedeur Sanders? He's still stuck in the shadows, watching, waiting, caught between being one snap away from glory and one front office decision away from being forgotten. And that's the tragedy of it all. Sanders didn't flop on draft night because of his arm, his accuracy, or his intelligence. He slid because of politics, perception, and timing. Now, in Cleveland, he risks becoming just another name in the franchise's long graveyard of quarterbacks, buried not by failure, but by mismanagement. The Browns say they want stability, but what they're really creating is limbo. Instead of picking a path, they keep juggling veterans, rookies, and draft board dreams of tomorrow's savior. And every second they spend chasing what's next is another tick of the clock against Sanders. Opportunities in the NFL don't last forever. If Shedeur gets his chance, it may come mid-season, when the offense is sputtering and the pressure is heaviest. He'll either silence every doubt with play that forces the Browns to believe, or he'll feed the narrative that he never should have been there in the first place. And make no mistake, fans won't be patient. In a city starved for a real franchise quarterback, the margin between the future and the forgotten is razor thin. For Sanders, the window hasn't closed, but it's not wide open either. Every week he spends on the sideline is another reminder that in Cleveland, the clock is always ticking.